The scaffolding that has surrounded the West End Heritage listed building for many years is to finally come down, and news to refurbish the Institute's Hamilton Annex, built in the 1890s, has been welcomed. Under the watchful eye of the National Trust, restoration work, estimated at around $5 million, will not only return the building to its past glory, but provide an arts centre of learning for the future.
It'll be the second biggest art facility, training facility in the state, and will provide the whole range of fine art training, complete with a gallery, open spaces, statuary area, the whole works. We're really excited about that one.
Meanwhile, Minister for Education Virginia Chadwick has also announced $8.4 million for the second stage of the Glendale campus. Major expansion will pave the way for a specialist centre in light automotive and vehicle trades courses. A new library and business centre will be built, as well as additional classrooms and offices. 9 hectares of land adjacent to the site has been purchased for the development, work due to begin early next year.
I think we'll be picking up something in the order of 2,000 students. We'll be shifting some staff away from the Newcastle Ties Hill campus to Glendale, but basically you'll see an expansion of staff in something in the order of 20 or 30 full-time staff, I think, by the time it's finished.
Council was originally considering 2 referenda to be held in conjunction with the July 24th election. The first, on Green Point, was vetoed because Aldermen couldn't decide on the wording. And last night, Council decided against a poll on the way the city elects its mayor. The first vote was level at 7-all, the independents wanting the referendum, the Labor aldermen opposing it. A rescission motion was lodged and the vote taken again at the end of the night. The independents believed Alderman Mark Booth would tip the balance in their favour. However, Alderman Booth chose not to take part in either vote. Alderman Booth today said he would have voted for the referendum but decided to leave early instead. In the end, Deputy Mayor Laurie Manning used her casting vote to put the matter to rest. The independents are concerned Council may now still have to bear the cost of another poll before September 1994, when, under the Local Government Act, councils have to finally make up their mind on the number of aldermen and the method of choosing the mayor.
Well, I'm disappointed in it because I think that's the only way we can have an input from the public, and it's the only way we can save $150,000 to $200,000 on another referendum, which we're bound, I believe, to have by the 1st of September 1994.
A group of 20 Year 11 students at City Hall this afternoon was in Business Principles. They've developed and will learn to run a business as part of the Young Achievers Australia program. The company is called Novocastrian and will produce a recycled paper-making kit. It's a product they hope will appeal to everyone, and they see it as environmentally friendly and educational for the young. Each of the directors from schools throughout Newcastle takes a hand in the production. As well as business theories and practices, the students are learning how to get along, cooperating as team members. Marketing of the recycled paper-making kit will be directed at schools.
Shadow Industrial Relations spokesman Jeff Shaw is on a mission to destroy the Fay government's proposed changes to the Industrial Relations Act. In Newcastle today, he told union representatives the changes would allow enterprise agreements between workers and bosses, which could slash penalty rates.
For workers in various industries, such as the retail industry and the hospitality industry, workers could suffer losses per week of $30 or $40.
Mr Shaw says New South Wales is heading down the same road as Victoria, with workers' conditions slowly being eroded. Industrial Relations Minister Kerry Chikarovsky has dismissed Mr Shaw's claims, saying he is undertaking a campaign of fear based on half-truths and baseless allegations. She says workers would not be disadvantaged. But the Minister does admit the amendments will give industries like the service industry the right to negotiate enterprise agreements. The proposal goes before Parliament again in 2 or 3 months. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The swell at Avoca could easily be called deceptive. One minute it was gentle and rolling, next thing boomers were crashing towards shore. The idea is to assemble your boat and race out to sea to pick up a patient, and then back to shore. From starter's gun to dry sand normally takes around 75 seconds. That is, if your motor starts on cue, or you don't end up upside down like DY. They spent the afternoon paddling back to shore. Newcastle club nobbies thrashed the others in their heat. Most of the other North Coast clubs have made it through to tomorrow's finals. Mansell Bay, trained by Newcastle's Paul Perry, paid an amazing $31.40 for the win. Second place was also from Newcastle, but a super dividend for a trifecta, just $1, and all of that could have been yours. In Brisbane, the Foster's Tattersalls Cup was the feature event at Eagle Farm. The winner, Ancient Ritual, paid $10.50 and $3.70. Just how many netballers are in town was evident at this morning's gala opening. The pomp and ceremony, an increasing ritual and show of the sport's depth. It wasn't long though until they were down to the action. One of the more entertaining games in the under-14s was between Sutherland in the blue and white against Manly Warringah. Manly's defence was enthusiastic. Sutherland snatched a few goals early, but it wasn't enough. Manly winning 21-12. The Newcastle under-14s are currently sitting in third place and are looking the better of the local sides. In the under-15s, Penrith in the white and black played a thrilling game against Northern Suburbs from Sydney. It's expected a number of these players will be selected for the state talent squad named on Monday. The squad will train under state coaches in Armidale next year. Both sides were almost equally matched, however Penrith finished strongly, winning 19-11. The championships continue tomorrow at District Park.
The fire started in the timber cottage about 3 o'clock this morning. The young man, whose name hasn't been released, died as the flames engulfed the house. Fire brigade officers found a 30-year-old woman unconscious on the floor of the premises. She was revived by ambulance officers. The alarm had been raised by a third occupant of the house. She'd woken to find the house well alight. Meanwhile, exploding ammunition hampered the job of Newcastle firefighters at Mayfield. The heat detonated bullets from a .22 calibre rifle. The fire engulfed the front section of an engineering supply firm in George Street. The residence at the rear was also severely damaged. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
It may look easy, but getting shots like these on target is harder than it seems. Shooters spend hours practicing their accuracy for competitions. This weekend's carnival gave them the chance to show off their talent. Current national skeet shoot champion Dave Dunn took part in the two-day carnival. Local shooter Rolly Palmer gave him a run for his money. The competition was a 50-target event, with points awarded every time the bullet found its mark. It was an all-Queensland winners list, with Max Barton taking out the first and third events. Jim Wilberforce took out the second. The Young Labor Party is made up of those who wish to have a say in how their organisation is run. They are actively involved in campaigning and hold conferences to discuss Labor policies. Interest in the party has grown on the North Coast since the March federal election, leading to the formation of a branch in Port Macquarie. Such is the enthusiasm for politics among the young that the branch already has more than 50 members.
It doesn't take much to realise that a bit of a push in this area would unseat the sitting Nationals, and a large part of that will come from mobilising young people in the area.
The branch is still getting off the ground, with members meeting today to elect an executive. It's the first time a Young ALP branch has been formed in the Port Macquarie area. Members will attend Young Labor's Sydney conference in September.
A local operator came up with the idea after seeing weekend car markets gain popularity in Sydney. Similar ventures in this area haven't gotten past councils or the wall of opposition put up by other car dealers and the Motor Traders Association. Organiser Phil Herf was pleased with the roll-up at the first Hunter Weekend Car Market held at the Maitland Showground. It's a chance for private sellers and buyers to get together, sidestepping car dealers and newspaper classified ads. But it does cost $30 to park your car on the lot. The licensed operator is confident that there are adequate checks in place to ensure that buyers don't wind up with a bomb.
We've got to insist that people have a current pink slip, which is no older than 28 days, and that ensures that the vehicle is roadworthy.
As with most private sales, there are no guarantees, and buyers are warned to check the register of encumbered vehicles. The market will operate on the second and fourth weekends of every month. Greeter in the Hunter Valley seemed like a new world for many displaced persons immigrating to Australia after the Second World War. As far as Peter Reaper's small war-ravaged Ukrainian hometown was concerned, he'd been killed in action. His name was etched on a memorial alongside those of his two brothers who did die. As a forward scout, Peter fought against the invading German army at the battles of Moscow, Stalingrad and Kursk, until he was taken prisoner. When he was released, he discovered his own country had fallen under brutal Stalinist repression. Now he's ready to go home, taking with him a holy candle to replace the one he saw snuffed out in his own Ukrainian Orthodox church 50 years ago. A story entitled A Footnote to My Epitaph was put to pen by David Mason-Jones, who read a small extract during a service at St Mary's Anglican Church at Greeter.
And sometimes, even now as I tell my story, I cannot believe it when I reflect on the idea that I have come to live a normal life.
The Newcastle Knights came out brimming with confidence, and it wasn't long until Jamie Ainscough found some room down the sideline and Michael Hagan waiting for the pass. Balmain appeared to be in shock. 10 minutes later, it looked more like they were asleep. The try later came under scrutiny because it was so close to the line. The Knights didn't care. They continued on a try-scoring spree. Michael Brown later made the score a little bit more respectable for the Tigers. The game will be replayed on Tuesday night at 10:30. The big hopes of the Championship division were Coffs Harbour in the blue and white and the strong Newcastle under-14s team with the green skirts. However, despite a string of wins early in the tournament, both teams failed to win or come a place in their divisions. Over the past 3 days, state selectors have been watching more than 600 under-15 years players to pick a state talent squad. Newcastle and the North Coast fared very well, with 6 girls named in the 20-person squad. Those named will now meet and train regularly under the state's best coaches. In the minor divisions, Taree won the 12 years, Muswellbrook the 13s, Maitland the 14s, and it was a two-way tie for first in the under-15s between Grafton and Port Stephens. Although Sydney clubs won the major awards, officials were happy with the standard from the country areas and believe within 12 months the winning roles could be reversed.
I'll hold the wheel, man.
In the early hours of December 21st, 1991, David John Hurd was walking beside the F3 freeway near Cooranbong when he was hit by a vehicle and died. 7 months later, an inquest into his death returned an open finding. With no driver and no vehicle identified, the mystery of the hit and run remained. That is, until the suicide of 27-year-old Ian Brian Thompson on February 7 this year, when it emerged that he was the driver of the car that allegedly hit Mr Hurd. Justice Brown reopened the inquest, and in the witness box at Newcastle Local Court today was 20-year-old Melissa April Barr of Weston, a passenger in Thompson's white utility the night Mr Hurd was killed. Miss Barr told the court that she saw a thing run in front of the car, but it was too late to avoid a collision. She said it wasn't until she saw the deceased's face at the point of impact that she realised it was a human. Miss Barr said she asked Ian Thompson to stop and ring an ambulance, but he kept driving. In cross-examination, counsel for the Hurd family, Warwick Tregilgas, asked Miss Barr why she hadn't contacted an ambulance. "I was scared. I don't know why." Tregilgas: "If you contacted an ambulance, it might have been possible to save this person's life." Barr: "I know. I was scared." The coroner found while he believed there is a moral obligation on passengers to report such an incident, it was the now dead driver who didn't meet his legal obligations under the Traffic Act. The finding devastated David Hurd's mother, Leslie Lee, and brother Neil, who were at the inquest.
I think that maybe the laws of this country should be changed. It was her responsibility, I think, to report this accident, even to phone an ambulance.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
This week, 1,200 classical dancers will go through this routine, adding those last-minute touches to makeup, limbering up and getting the final once-over from Mum. Backstage, and tension was mounting. What's going through your mind at the moment?
Just hope I remember my dance.
Well, there was no trouble on that score. Once on stage, any sign of nerves had disappeared. Justine McLucas from Sydney has been dancing since she was 6. She hopes to make it a career.
I like the challenge. It's sort of, well, hard in a way, but then it's enjoyable.
The 12-year-olds age division was won by Samantha Sullivan from Rockhampton, but the competition isn't over yet. The dancing will continue this week with 3 scholarships awarded to the top dancers. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The small town will be a clamour of crafty crowds. Vintage buses will ferry fossicas from one attraction to the next. There'll be clicking looms and handmade brooms. Catch John Wright at work in the main street, a 6th-generation floodplain farmer who's rediscovered the art of millet broom making. Brooms from the hunter once swept the floors of a nation. The millet is still grown right by the river and is fashioned into a broom over a century-old machine. Electric toasters play a part in a modern adaptation of greeting card embossing, and a little boot polish can add a shine to this gourd from a vine. There'll also be a blacksmith, wood turner, whip and toy maker, and demonstrations of spinning and weaving. If you've worked up a thirst, sample a drop of homemade ginger beer. And last but not least, from the town that brought us the great Dunny debate, remember the row over who owned the park toilet? A collection of miniature ceramic outhouses. What else?
Thank you all very much. Pass it up to me. I just got to sort of work out where everything's going there first.
Nurses from across the country gathered at Newcastle Uni for a 2-day conference. The way nurses care for patients has changed in recent years, particularly with a push to get patients home from hospital quickly. The change in policy has freed up beds, but it also means patients go home before they've fully recovered. Carolyn Bailey from the Hunters Community Health Service told the conference nurses should be on the lookout for patients who may need extra help while they convalesce at home. Some states have gone a step further in addressing this issue. Perth nurse Linda Murray will present a paper about an innovative concept in health care. They hope to establish a nurse management unit, which would offer patients a less high-tech place to be cared for before they actually go home.
It would be a good stepping stone for patients in the surgical areas who need some extra education or a bit more time before they're ready to go home. For patients with newly diagnosed conditions such as diabetes.
The conference is also addressing issues of pain management and nurse education. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
These men and women fought for Australia during the Second World War. As part of the Royal Australian Navy, they served on such vessels as the HMAS Canberra, Shropshire and West Australia. Once a year, veterans from all over the country gather in the Manning Valley for a 3-day reunion. Proudly displaying their medals, more than 200 men and women marched down the main street of Taree this morning before holding a memorial service and wreath-laying ceremony.
It's a part of our dedication of our fellow members, and we think that we should remember them the way things are going at the present. We feel the defence of the country is one of the most important things a man can have.
A record number of teams took to the forest around Wauchope last night for the annual Hastings Rally. Drivers from all over the state made the trek north for the 130-kilometre race, but it was the local Wauchope teams who took the first 3 places. In one of the closest events in history, only 17 seconds separated first and third. Pat Roberts and Tony Avery in their 4-wheel drive Mazda 323 got the checkered flag, with David Darby and Philip Slade hot on their heels. Seconds later, Pete Roberts and Darren Sfor sped their way into third place to seal the local hat-trick. New South Wales against Queensland. It was like the state of origin all over again. Despite more than 13 teams taking part in the Eastern Touch tournament, the 3 finals came down to a tussle between the Cane Toads and the Cockroaches. The ladies over 27's final was probably the most vocal of the day, with dozens of spectators voicing their support. The final remained evenly matched for most of the game. Both sides made some handy breaks, but had trouble handling the ball. The Blues finally won the clash 3 tries to 2. Sally Holmes clearly the player of the match. In other games, the Blues took out the women's under-20 final 4-1, while Queensland snuck home to win the men's.
The tight Newcastle Entertainment Centre track provided few opportunities to pass. That turned into frustration and the odd accident. American star Mike Jones was involved in a spill early on and injured his hand. It cost him a win but increased his determination to ride harder.
My teammate sort of slacked on me last night, so I want to go out and win the race for myself.
So when it came to the expression session, he appeared without a shirt, trying to impress, but things didn't quite go to plan. He lay unconscious for nearly 20 minutes, but when he did wake up, he thought he was in New York. Paramedics took him to hospital, but he was cleared of any serious injury and later returned to the centre, asking to ride in the final. Kawasaki rider Stephen Andrew took out the 125 class, with Joel Elliott close behind. Ben Parise, riding for the Peter Jackson team, was way out in front in the 20-lap final of the 250s and finished an easy winner. Promoters are impressed with the venue and are confident they will return to Newcastle. What a difference a week can make. The Falcons rebounded like their lives counted on it. Everett Stevens sat out the first 25 minutes, but when he came on, he wasn't firing blanks. The Falcons were 10 down at half-time, but came back, making every shot count. With 40 seconds to go, the Falcons were only 2 points in front. Paul Kuiper, with a rare sprint and a basket, wrapped it up. Everett Stevens couldn't wait to get home this morning. He became a father just hours before the game and was busting to get back to the hospital. Baby Chanel is very healthy and the first for Everett and his wife Kay.
Despite the name, the rules of bucket racing are quite simple. Commuter 100cc two-stroke and 150cc three-stroke bikes belted out around a go-kart track. And naturally, the first over the finish line wins. A relatively new sport, bucket racing is also easy on the hip pocket.
It's cheap to get into. You can pick up a bike for $300, buy some new tyres, and away you go.
Chief Scrutineer Mark Downey recommends the sport to anyone who thinks they may like to become involved in motorcycle racing.
If you were sort of half-hearted, didn't know whether you wanted to do it, this would be the way to start. This is really a very good stepping stone for people who want to go racing.
Today's meet saw more than 30 competitors from Grafton and Coffs Harbour take to the track. Grafton's Paul Smith took line honours in the sports class, followed by Mark Silverwright and Pete Smith. Coffs Harbour's Mark Downey took out the super sports class event.